Hi everyone, Brian here. If you watched my last video or if you follow me on Instagram, which if you don't, please do, you've probably already seen what I'm about to show you. But if you haven't, I created a really cool workflow macro combination for Cubase and Ableton, specifically on Mac, that basically helps you produce and mix so much faster by basically putting inserts onto your tracks way more quickly and also way more creatively. Let me show you what I'm talking about, and then I'm going to show you how to set this up. This is kind of complicated, so I tried to make this as easy as possible for you to set this up. But first of all, a demonstration. So here we are in Cubase, and usually if you're a Cubase user, you know this, that if you want to put an insert onto your insert section, you have to drag your mouse all the way here and then click on your insert section, and then you click on one of the available slots, and then you type in your plugin, and then you hit enter, and it's there. And yes, this is quick, but we can be quicker because we know better. So the way that we do this is by hitting Command I, and then you get a list of your plugins, but also my insert section already loaded up and ready to go. And so if I want Pro Q, all I have to do is hit enter. It'll go to my first available insert section, and then it'll load the plugin for me. If I want an 1176, I search for 1176, I hit enter, it goes to the next available insert slot, and then it inserts it for me. But what's really cool about it is that if I hit Command I again, and then I want a compressor, it gives me all of my compressors, or any plugin that has compressors. So this is like a channel strip, but it has a compressor, so maybe I want to use that. But what if I want something specifically for drums, right? So drums, that's 1176. If I want an LA 2A, these are all my LAs, but if I want a 2A, all my LA 2As, and then I can load it up, and it'll do it for me. And what's really cool about it, yeah, there we go. But what's really cool about it is that it also works in Ableton. So if I want Pro Q, I can do that. It'll search it for me, put it in for me. If I want 1176, it'll do that as well. If I want to put Soothe on, it'll do that. So that's a really, 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 really quick way to just work and like, oh, I need this, I need that, and then just like have everything loaded up for you. So you don't have to interact with your software so much, shift your hands from your mouse to your keyboard and type stuff. And I think this is really cool. So let me show you how to set this up in your own setup, and you'll be mixing and producing so much faster. So this is a very complicated workflow. It uses two apps. It uses Alfred, which everybody should use, and it uses Keyboard Maestro, which again, everybody should use. And because it's so complicated, I tried to figure out what's the best way that I can give you all the information that you need to make this for your own setup. And so what I ended up doing is creating a bundle that you can download in the link in the description. And so you will be getting an Alfred workflow starter, which will have everything that you need to start building your list. And then you will have Keyboard Maestro macros that are the bare minimum that you need, again, to kind of customize it, because you might be not using Cubase, so you won't need all of the Keyboard Maestro macros, or maybe you have different versions of Cubase or things look a little different, and because you're using it in your own DAW, you will need to do some work on your end, but once you get it working, it will be great, and you'll be so happy that you did this. So let's dive right in. Let me show you how to get things started. So the first thing that you want to do in order to make this happen is to install Alfred and to install Keyboard Maestro on your setup. If you don't have those installed, I'm very disappointed. Pause the video, go buy them. It's worth the price. Come back when you have them installed. I'm not going to show you how to do this. It's really easy. And then we can actually start building this thing. So the actual first step that we need to do is to build our list. And we do this in Alfred, but we're not going to load Alfred. We're going to go to the file that you just downloaded, and you will have more files than this, but you will have Brian Rivlin's Genius insert workflow. We're going to double click on this, and then it will launch Alfred preferences, and you will have this window. You're going to click on install. So here we have our workflow starter. And if you want to change the name of your workflow, which I don't think you really need to, because I think this is a perfect name for this workflow. I don't think anybody should ever change this. This is great. But if you really want to, this is how you would do this. Right click, edit details, and then if you really must, then you can change the name, but I think it's a great name. But what you really want to do is actually add an image. And the reason is, when you actually load up your list, it's going to have a little icon here, but I think it's a really cool touch. If you have a logo of your own, it'll be right here, and I think it's really, really cool. So the way that we do this is we go to our browser, and then we search for, let's say, VST PNG, and you're going to go to images, and you're going to click on the first one because this is what we want. You're going to right click, copy image, and then you're going to go back to Alfred and paste, Command V, and then save. And here we are, and it's represented already in our lists, meaning whichever list we're going to choose, I'll show you later, it's going to be represented in our list, which is really, really cool. The next step is to choose our hotkey to actually launch the list. Personally, I like Command I, but I already have this in my own list. So let's do Command Y, but it can be whatever you want. And the one thing that we need to do is to make sure that our key command works only when we're in Ableton or Cubase or both. And so we do this by going to related apps, and then we're going to choose our DAW that we want. So you're going to go to your applications, and then you don't have to look for it. If you just type Cubase 12, there it is. It can be Cubase 11 or 10 or 10.5, whatever you're using. And let's choose Ableton Live 11. There we go. So now we have both of them, and we can hit save. And so now every time that we're going to hit Command Y in Cubase or Ableton, it's going to load our list. Now let's choose the list that we want to choose. There are two ways to build your list. There is the simple way with a list filter, and then there's the complicated way with a script filter. I really encourage you to do it with a complicated way. However, with a simple list, it's kind of foolproof and it's really easy to rearrange and do stuff, but you're missing out on two really cool features. One is to be able to search for plugins based on just keywords that you want. So vocal or drums, which will bring up different plugins that you want, which I think is really, really cool. The other thing is that if I search for 1176, if I hold down Option, I can have a different version of the 1176, and it changes the subtitles and it changes the image, which I think is really cool. So now if I hit Return or Enter, it's going to load up the one that I saw. But if I'm not holding down Alt, it's going to load up, the Rev A, which I think is really cool. So you don't have to do it with plugin versions. You can do it with like mono, stereo, or what have you. So I think this is kind of really, really cool thing to have. So I think this is enough reasons for you to choose the complicated one. But if you just want to type in the plugin name and then do it that way, you can use the simple way to set up your list. So let's start with a simple list, and then I'm going to show you the complicated. So if you're doing the complicated list, jump to this time in the video. And if you're doing the simple list, let's go ahead and connect our hotkey to our simple list and start building our list. To build our list, we're going to double click on the list filter, and then this is our first item. So the title is going to be our plugin name. So let's do Pro Q. Subtitle doesn't really matter. You can leave it blank, but it's kind of like a little text underneath the title. I like the company name. You can have like the plugin type. So EQ maybe if you want. I like the company name. It just looks better. And then the argument is actually the piece of information that is going to go through our workflow to then launch Keyboard Maestro. So there's a couple of things that you want to be mindful of. If you have multiple versions of, say, LA2A, you want to be more specific with your arguments. So maybe LA2A Silver or LA2A UAD and then LA2A Waves. You want the argument to be different because you can have one argument per plugin. So just know what is your argument that you're going to choose. I only work with Pro Q3, so I'm going to just choose Pro Q. And the last step is to choose an image. So we're going to go to Google again, and then we're going to choose Fab Filter Pro Q, and we're going to choose this image, right click, copy image, and then go back to Alfred, paste, and then save. And then essentially, if I go to Cubase and I choose Command Y, there's our list. It doesn't do anything yet, but it works. So now what you want to do is just start populating your list. So let's go back. Let's do another one. So plus, title is 1176 Rev A. And it's going to be by, let's say UAD, right? And so we're going to do the argument 1176 Rev A. And then we need an image for it. So back to Google, UAD 1176 Rev A. There it is. Right click, copy image, back to Alfred, paste. It's there. So Cubase, Command Y, there's our two items. This is really cool. If I search for 1176, it's that. If I choose Pro Q, I search for that. So start populating everything And then we're going to go to the next step, which will be in this time in the video after I show you how to do the complicated way. If you chose the complicated way to making this macro, congratulations, you're very brave. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through everything that you need to know, and I made it very, very simple. So the first thing that you want to do is connect your hotkey to your complicated list. Essentially, when you hit this, your complicated list is going to launch. And if we double click on our complicated list, this is our list with one item. I know it looks daunting, but in order to make this more clear, I really recommend you using Visual Studio Code. It's free and it makes everything way more clear. So I'll have a link in the description below. Go ahead, install it. And once you do, we're going to select everything and then copy, and then we're going to Visual Studio Code, and then we're going to hit Command N for new document, and then Command V to paste everything. And what you can see is that it kind of gave color for everything. So everything is way more clear now. And what you need to know is that this is the start of the list. This is one item, all of this is one item, and then this is the end of the list. So it's kind of easier to figure out what's going on. And what I like about Visual Studio Code is that if you click one of the termination points, I don't know what they're called, I don't know how to code, but if you click on this, you can see that this correlates with this. So this is the end of that, and this is the end of that, and that guy is the end of that guy, and they have different colors, so it's really, really easy to follow along. And basically, in order to create our first item, let's choose Pro Q. The UID is just the ID of the item on the list. This is internally for Alfred. We're going to choose Pro Q. The title is the actual plugin name that we're going to see in our list. So let's do Pro Q. The subtitle is the little piece of text that you see underneath the title. I like the company name. I think it makes sense. You can have it by the type of plugin. So maybe EQ if you want. I kind of like having the plugin company. So let's keep that. So let's do Fab Filter, and then match is where the word match magic happens. So we're going to choose ProQ because we want that if we search for ProQ, it's going to load up ProQ, but maybe Fab Filter and maybe EQ as well. So that way, if we're searching for EQ, every EQ that has match EQ will also show ProQ or maybe any other EQ plugin that we put in there. And then the argument is the important portion of this. So the argument is the piece of information that goes from the list to the next step, which I'll show you later, that basically Alfred knows what to refer to when it's launching the Keyboard Maestro macro. So why this is important is that if you have multiple versions of plugins, so if you have ProQ2 and ProQ3, or maybe you have LE2A Silver and LE2A Vintage, or maybe from different companies, you want to differentiate the arguments between each other. So for now, we're going to do ProQ. Just if you have different versions of similar plugins, don't have the same arguments for multiple items, because it'll confuse Alfred and it will basically launch the wrong macro later on. So for this one, we can just leave it at ProQ. Autocomplete doesn't really matter for us, but it's kind of Q. Let's do ProQ as well. I like to have the plugin name. What autocomplete does is if we search for EQ and we search for Spice Rack, if I hit tab, it's going to autocomplete to Spice Rack, and then it'll show me just this plugin. So that's what that does. So just have the title there and everything is going to be okay. And then the last thing is to change the image name. This will be, when you load this up, it'll be image name like that. And so what you want to do is change image name to, let's do ProQ. Again, for each item, you want to have a different name. And basically, we just created a list. All we have to do is to select everything, copy, go back to Alfred, replace all of this, and then save. And now if I go to Cubase and hit Command Y, we will see our first list. We don't have an image. Why don't we have an image? Well, because there's no file called ProQ. And where do we put this file? Let me show you that now. So we're going to go back to our workflow. And you see this list, but it's not connected to anything. It's never going to be connected to anything. It's just there for you to create images that will look good on your list. So we're going to double click this and you'll have one item. So we're going to go to Google and we're going to search for Fab Filter ProQ. And then we're going to choose the first image and then right click, copy image, and then go back to Alfred, paste, and save. And so now we have the image, but it's the wrong name. how do we get to the image and change the name? Go back to your list filter, the one below your complicated. If you're not using the simple list, you can go ahead and just delete it. Go back to the simple list that is not connected to anything, and then you see this folder icon. Click on it. And then you're going to see this folder with list filter images. You're going to double click on this, and then this is our image. We just have to change the name to Pro Q, the one that we have here. Once they match, all you have to do is just launch our Command Y, our list, and there we go. We have an image. Let's add another list, but we're going to do it with a macro that I created in Keyboard Maestro that basically eliminates all of this hassle. So every time that you want to add a new item onto your list, maybe you bought a new plugin and you want to add it to your list. I don't recommend doing it from the Alfred list. I really encourage you to do it from Visual Studio Code. So first of all, let's save our list. So Command S or Command Shift S for save as, and then usually it'll be by default .json, JSON. Don't do any extensions, just give it a name and then hit save. I already have it saved, so I'm going to hit replace. So that every time that you want to have a new item on your list, you're going to go to File, Open Recent, and then choose your list. And that way it's going to be easier to add lists. So technically you could copy this and then go for a new line and then paste and then just change things, but there is a better way of doing this. So if this is our list now, we're going to hit return or enter and then backspace so we're on square one, so we're not, forward in our text. And then what you want to do, and you have to do this just the one time, you're going to go to the folder that you downloaded and you will have Alfred list filter. .km macros, and you're going to double click on it and it's going to import it into Keyboard Maestro, and it's going to be this macro that I created. By default, this is the hotkey that I gave it to kind of launch this macro. It can be whatever you want. Usually by default, macros that are imported are disabled. So if it's going to be grayed out like this, so you're going to right click and then enable, and then it'll be enabled. And so why I like this macro so much is that, let's say our next item is 1176. I'm going to hit my macro, Control Shift Alt Command and C, and then it prompts you to give it the information and it's going to build all of this item information for you. So UID, let's do 1176 Rev A, and then enter. The title is going to be 1176 Rev A. The subtitle, it's going to be UAD or UADX because it's the native version, but let's just say UAD. And then the match, it's going to be everything that you want to match it with. But by default, it already has your title and your subtitle, so you don't have to do it. So let's go with compressor, drums, punchy, vocals, vintage. I think this is big enough of a list. So enter, and then the argument, we're going to do 1176 Rev A. Just note that you need to remember your argument. So let's keep it UAD 1176 Rev A, and then the image, we want to remember the name of the image because that's the name that we're going to give it. So let's do 1176 Rev A. And that's it. It's basically done. All you have to do is hit Command V and it just builds it for you. So yeah, that's it. Fantastic. Everything is proper. Now all we have to do is save this, Command A, Command C, go back to Alfred, go to your complicated list, Command A, Command V to replace everything, and then we have to get an image. So we're going to go to Google again, UID 1176 Rev A, take this image, copy. Image, go back to Alfred, we're going to go to our second list, go to our icon, change this, hit save, go back to our folder. There's our next one. It's going to be 1176 Rev A. I think that's it. Now if we go to Cubase, Command Y, yay, it's done. We did it. So now if we search for vocals, it's going to find it. If we search for compressor, it's going to do it. If we search for EQ, it's going to do it. So we got our list. It's working. We got different matching words for different plugins, and we're basically ready to just stack the plugins and then go to the next step. Let me just show you how to get different versions of plugins. If you're not interested, jump to this part of the video to go to the next step. But if you are interested in how to get modifications, Control Alt Shift, holding them down and having different versions, this is how you would do it. In the file that you downloaded, you are going to have a file called mods with no extension. You're going to drag it onto Visual Studio Code. and it's going to open up a new tab, and it's going to have all of the information that you need to create your modification. You're going to select everything, Command C, and then you're going to go to your list. So the mods kind of live between this yellow one after icon and before the one that actually closes up the list. So we're going to hit return or enter, and then maybe backspace once, and then we're going to hit Command V. And here we have everything that we need. We just need to change stuff. So mods is great. You don't have to touch that. Mod is basically what you're going to hold down. So Alt is going to be Option, Command is going to be Command. There are different versions for each one. I'll have in the description which one needs to go. If you want to do Shift or if you want to do Control, there's a name for each one. Let's go ahead with Alt, and then this is kind of what you want to change. So we want to change the argument because it's a different plugin. So let's do 1176 black. And then we're going to also change the subtitle to, what is it in my list? Hold on. 1176, it's the AE, whatever that means. 1176 AE. And then we also want to change the image. So 1176 AE. And now we have a modification going. So all we have to do is copy everything, copy, and then go to Alfred, update our list, and then we have to do the image. Google again, this is the one, copy, paste it here, save. And then we're going to go to the folder, change the name, 1176 AE. Now, if I hit Command Y, here's everything. And then if I hit Option, it's going to change it like we had before. That's it. It's kind of simple, it's kind of complicated, but that's the way you would do it. So this is how you build your list. This is the first step. Now let's get it actually doing something and then go to Keyboard Maestro. So we have a bunch of steps to go, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So now we have a list with a bunch of items and we want to pass on the information so Alfred would know what to do once you select a list item and pass on that information to launch a Keyboard Maestro macro to control your DAW. What we want to do, if you chose the simple list or the complicated list, it's all the same. You're connecting your list to this little junction box. And this is where the arguments that we had before come into play. So let's go ahead and double click on this little junction box. And basically, this is where it takes the arguments and spits it out to the next step and final step in Alfred. Our argument for the first item was Pro Q. So we're going to do Pro Q, then Pro Q. Once we have more items, we're going to just add them. So for the simple list, if it was 1176 Rev A, then 1176 Rev A. For a complicated list, we actually had a different argument. We had UAD 1176 Rev A, so we're going to have the exact name as it is in our list. But then we also had a modification for this, remember? So it was 1176 AE, then 1176 AE, because we wanted to load the other version, and then we had an LA2A, then LA2A. So this is why our arguments is important that it's unique for each item, because it's going to look for each of the arguments and it's going to do a different action for each one. Then once we have that, the last step is to have it execute a script. And I already have one script for you. All you have to do is to right click the plugin name, because once you have a lot of plugins, you want to know which one is which plugin. This is what my list looks like. So the first thing, you want to change the name. So let's double click on this bottom portion and let's go with Pro Q. It's already connected to Pro Q. And then here we're going to have the script that runs the Keyboard Maestro macro. We're going to get to that later. But for now, let's copy this and paste. And we're going to create one for 1176 and connect it. Copy, paste, put it underneath. This is going to be our 1176 AE, copy, paste, LA2A. Connect it as well. So now we have 99% of our list. So this is the point where we're going to go to Keyboard Maestro to build our macros and then the final step is to connect Keyboard Maestro to this, and then we're done. So the next thing that we're going to do is going to go to Keyboard Maestro. And again, this is going to be split between two parts. So yeah, let's go to Keyboard Maestro and make everything work first in Cubase and then in Ableton. So if you're just an Ableton user, go to this part of the video. And if you're using Cubase, stick around. Here we go. This part of the video actually applies to both Cubase and Ableton users, so stick around if you're using both or just one of them, and then Ableton users, I will let you know again when to skip ahead and to which time in the video once we get to Cubase exclusive things, because it's kind of long and you don't want to stick around for that. But for now, in the file that you downloaded, you will have another file. It's called Brian Rivlin's Genius Insert Macros, which I think is a fantastic name for a macro group. So you're going to double click on this, and then it will load up in Keyboard Maestro. Usually macro groups and macros come disabled in Keyboard Maestro, so you'll have to right click and enable them. Once you have it enabled, have the macro group selected, and then let's go ahead and select available in all applications and change it to available in these applications. And basically we're going to limit these macros that are in here and all other macros that you're going to create. We're going to limit them to just Ableton, just Cubase, or both. So we're going to hit the plus icon, and then if you're not seeing the correct DAW for you, you can either go to recent or more. And once you go to more, you see basically everything. So let's search for Cubase 12, and then another plus for Ableton Live 11. If you have different versions, use the different version that you have for you. So now let's go ahead and make this work in Cubase. If you're an Ableton user exclusively and you don't want to do the Cubase route, go to this time in the video and then I'll show you everything that you need to know. It's pretty simple. For Cubase users, this is kind of complicated, but we can do this. The first thing that we want to do is to address the toggle insert section. As you can see, when I'm in Cubase and I have an audio track and maybe the insert section is toggled off, if I hit Command I, it's going to toggle it on. And then if I have a group track, it's going to, again, toggle it on, which is great. For instrument tracks, it's kind of shitty, but you have to first open this section and then you can hit Command I and then it'll toggle the insert section. I can't get it to work any other way, but it's still better than nothing, right? So the way that we do this is we have our macro, which is toggle insert section new. This might work right out of the box for you, but in case it doesn't, I'll show you what it's doing and what you might want to look for and maybe tweak and change to make it work. The thing that you must absolutely change is the hotkey to make this macro work, which is basically going to be the same one that you do to trigger your Alfred workflow. So for us, we have Command Y, so we're going to choose Command Y. And so what you might want to change in our macro is, what it's looking for is if the audio track insert is closed. And how does it determine if it's closed? It's looking for the image. It's looking for this exactly, not including the insert bypass or not bypass, because this might change color. If you don't have any inserts, it's going to be gray. If you have an insert on it, it's going to be blue. If it's bypass, it's going to be yellow. But it's always going to look like this when it's closed. So if it's not finding exactly this, what you can do is you can hit Command Shift and 4 and select the portion that you want to look for, which is basically just this portion, not including whatever is on the right to this box. And then once you have this, it's going to be on your desktop. So let's find that really quick. Here it is. And then what you want to do is to drag it. So we're going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and drag this. And there you go. Now it finds it. Or rather, now it's looking for it. What we can do to make sure that it's actually finding it is to split the window. If you have two monitors like I do, that's better. But if you don't, split the window into two. And then you can see it's true. It does see that our insert section is closed, which is great. If it doesn't really find it, even though you have the correct image, what you can do is you can change the accuracy. Having it just a little off is the sweet spot that it always finds, and it finds the correct one. Because if you go all the way here, these all look very similar. It's a little triangle with a little text. And so the more you go to like ballpark similar to, it's going to maybe get confused. So find the sweet spot where it's consistently finding your audio inserts. The next thing is, if this is closed, if it's finding the image, it's looking for this menu item and it want to click it. And it's searching for the menu item in Cubase 12. Well, two things. You don't have this menu item yet. I'm going to show you how to do this, and you might be using a different version of Cubase. So if you are using a different version of Cubase, change this to whatever version you're using. And then we want to create this macro. We're going to load up our key commands, and it's going to take a few years for it to load.
Many months later.
There we go. And then we want to create a new macro. So we're going to hit new, and then we're going to call it, I'm going to call it toggle insert section 2 because I already have one. And then we want to search for section or toggle to find it. Oh, there you go. Inspector and then toggle insert section. So this is the one, and we want to go to commands and add it. So now we have a menu item, right? If I go to edit, macros, toggle, insert section, and insert section 2. They're identical. Keyboard Maestro might not find it immediately. You might need to close Keyboard Maestro and then launch it again. And then you can go to menu, Cubase, edit, macros, toggle insert section 2, right? You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be that exact name for your macro, but this is how you get Keyboard Maestro to execute an action that does not exist in our menu items before, which is the toggle insert section. Next, if it doesn't find this, that probably means you're on an instrument track. And what it's looking for is audio inserts, because on an audio track, it just says inserts. But on instrument tracks, it says audio inserts. And so now we want it to look for this same exact thing. If it's not looking for this because maybe you're using a different version of Cubase, maybe your interface is different colors because you changed it, because you can do that in Cubase. Go ahead, Command-Shift-4, take a screenshot of that, drag it into here, and then again, fiddle around with how accurate it needs to be in order to be consistent every time. And so for instrument track, we can't toggle the insert section because when you're on an instrument track, it toggles the MIDI inserts. Who the hell uses MIDI insert section? Cubase, fix this. But because we can't do this with our macro, we need to physically click it. So this is why we basically want to have these images exactly the same. So if it's finding that the insert section is closed, which it currently does, click on the same one. So we can copy and paste this, and then it's clicking exactly on the center of this image. And then because it's clicking somewhere, it's basically closing out of our list. This is why I have another pause, and then I have another keystroke to launch the list. So for us, it's going to be Command Y again. So now, after we selected the list, we wanted to find the next available insert slot and put in the correct plugin. And that is what we're going to do in the next step. We're very close to being done. Okay, let's set up Cubase to find the next available insert slot. So what is basically happening in this macro is that if Keyboard Maestro sees an open audio track section, kind of like what we did before, but this time it's looking for this icon. So if Keyboard Maestro sees an open audio track insert section, which is currently true, then it's going to put the mouse in the first insert section slot. So what you might want to change is, again, what your open insert section looks like. Again, take a screenshot of it, drag it, play around with the accuracy, and then you want to copy this into here if you need to change it. So if it's seeing an open audio track, it's going to move the mouse, just move the mouse to the first insert slot, which is basically a little bit to the right and a little bit down from the image that it found. So essentially here, okay? So we can see that it's working when I'm doing this. You can see where it put the mouse. This is where it's going to be. Otherwise, which means if it's not seeing an open audio track insert section, then maybe look for an open instrument track insert section, which again, if you are seeing this, again, change the image if you need to, if it doesn't recognize it, then you're going to, again, move the mouse just a little bit to the right and a little bit lower than our image that you found, which is this, okay? And what's cool about it, I have display on, and this is why you see this little green bar, it shows you kind of, oh yeah, I found it. It's right here. So if it's finding a different one, if you have display checked for this one and for this one, it'll show you what it found, and you can see if you have any inconsistencies. Like, this is not the one that I wanted. Maybe it showed the equalizer. Then maybe you need to change, your accuracy to be more accurate. So it'll show you which one it found. It's kind of cool to see the little green icon. So this is the first thing. And then this is what's happening after. Essentially, it's going to repeat these actions until the color under the cursor is one of 4, which is essentially one of the 4 colors that are in an open insert section. I found that it's comprised of 4 different pixel colors. So it's going to repeat these actions. What are these actions? You don't need to care about this. Just know what's going on so you can know how to fix this if you need to. It's getting the mouse position, checking what's the color under the mouse position, and then if it's not this, it moves it down and then gets the new mouse position, okay? And then if it's not any of these colors, it's going to do it again and again and again until it finds the right color. So this is basically what this is doing. And once it found the correct color underneath the mouse, then it's going to get the mouse position again. And then you're going to click exactly where it is. This is what this macro does. You don't have to worry about it too much, but if you find that your mouse is not moving consistently, or it's not putting the mouse exactly at the right spot, or it keeps on going down, then you might want to change what the position relative to your image. Just know what each of these do and mess around with them. And if you run into any trouble, reach out, let me know, and then I will try to help you figure out. But I'm pretty sure if you're using Cubase 12, it's going to be just out of the box working. But now that you know what's going on, then you know how to fix it if it doesn't, which I think is really important. And so now that we have that, the last thing that we have to do is just to create an insert macro for each of our plugin that will utilize both of those macros that we just explored. Okay, let's go to our final macro and then wrap everything up, and then we'll be happy and we'll be producing so fast. So here we go. So we finally reached the final macro. This is the macro that is basically going to control our Cubase and Ableton. And if you're using just Cubase or just Ableton, you don't have to change anything. You just have to address the one that is relevant to you. If you're using both, you just have to address both of them. And this is the macro that once we have one set up, we're going to duplicate and basically make copies for each of the plugins that are in our lists. And then our list is going to basically execute this exact macro. And generally what is happening here is if Cubase is in front, even if you're using Ableton, that's fine. If Cubase is in front, then execute the insert macro for Cubase. If it's not, then if Ableton is in front, then execute these macros, which is basically the Ableton insert macro. Very, very easy. So let me show you what you need to know for Cubase. If you're just using Ableton, skip ahead just a little bit to this timestamp. But if you're using Cubase, this is what you need to know to make sure that this macro actually loads up the plugin that you want. So what the Cubase insert macro is actually very simple. First of all, it's going to execute a macro, which is find next available insert. And then what this macro does, as we've seen before, it basically searches for next available insert and then clicks on it. So it's ready to receive a text. And then we're going to insert that text by pasting. And we're going to write here the plugin name. Now, there's two things that I think you should really consider when doing this. One, have the full name of the plugin. So Fab Filter Pro Q3, exactly how it's written. So the closer you are, the better chances you have of it just having one result. So once we know that we're exactly with the name that it appears in your plugin list, we're going to copy it and paste it here. Just like that. The other thing that I would really recommend you doing is go into your plugin manager, and then usually by default, it's going to be default. So you'll have everything here, which is way too much. What I would recommend you doing is either start a new collection with all of the plugins or empty and build your collection. Because sometimes if you have VST2 and VST3, then you might load up the wrong one. So just make sure before you kind of like, oh yeah, it's Pro Q, whatever. I'm just gonna write Pro Q. Make sure that you know that you don't have any Pro Q2 there that might be first in the list, or that you don't have any VST2 versions if you want to load the VST3 version, right? So this is kind of just a little reminder to be as close as you can and test it first. That if I'm going to write this down, the only next thing that I need to do, if you look at this macro, is just hit enter and then it will load it. And so that what makes it possible for Cubase to just take it, find the next available one, insert it by typing, and by pasting, and then just load up the plugin. So when I hit Command Y, it's going to toggle the insert section. And then once I select this, it's going to launch this macro. But it's not going to because it's not connected yet. And how do we do that? The way that we do it is, first of all, change the name of your macro. So we're going to change it to Fab Filter Pro Q3. And the reason it's very important to name it is because this will be in the address for Alfred to execute. This will make sense. So the way that we trigger this macro is by clicking on or by script and then Apple script, and then you're just going to copy this. We're going to go back to Alfred, and this is our Pro Q, right? Here, we're going to paste our address. So now we have a fully working workflow. And so now with the macro that we built today, Command Y, Pro Q, and it works. That's it. It works. It's there. It's on my second screen. There it is. Perfect. So this is how you do it in Cubase. Now we're going to move to Ableton. It's a little simpler, but also a little complicated. So if you're using Ableton, then follow along. If you're not using Ableton, you're done. Skip ahead to the outro, and then, yeah, go ahead and fill your list. And then basically all you want to do is duplicate this for your next one. And then you're going to do 1176 Rev A, and then you're going to copy this, and you're going to paste it in 1176 Rev A, so we can see this is the right address. And then we want to change the name, so Cubase, and then let's do UADX 1176 Rev A. And so now, if I go to Cubase, Command Y, 1176 Rev A, and it works. This is how you do that. If you just use a Cubase, you're done. Skip ahead to the outro. I'll have nice things to say, and then, yeah, I'll see you in the next video, but go watch the outro. Yeah. If you're using Ableton, follow along. It's a little easier. There are also extra steps that you need to know. So, Ableton users, here we go. Ableton users, this is your moment to shine. This was way simpler to set up in Ableton than it was in Cubase. As you can see, for Cubase, we need 2 macros. For Ableton, it's just this one. So basically, because Ableton doesn't have insert slots, all we have to do is hit Command F and type things down in order to get our macros. However, there are a few things that I noticed that have inconsistencies that make this superior to just hitting Command F and writing it. Well, first of all, it's quicker. My method. And 2, there are more clicks sometimes, and I will show you. So basically what you need is just this macro. If you're using just Ableton exclusively, you can basically disable or delete these 2 if you absolutely are not going to load Cubase ever in your life and you don't want to clutter your insert group. So basically what is happening is, if Ableton is in front, the first thing that you might want to change is this. Maybe you don't have Ableton Suite 11. Maybe you are still using 10, maybe 12 is out. Make sure that this is the correct version for you. Otherwise, it won't recognize that it's in front. So if you don't have that version, you go to More, and then you look for the version that is correct for you. This is number 1. And then what is happening is it's going to bring to front the window with window index 2. What the hell is this? Let me show you. So essentially, Ableton is awesome. You almost don't need my macro. However, this is where Ableton falls short. If I say select the UADX 1176 Rev A, and then I load it, and then I tweak it a little bit. And now I want to load up Pro Q. If I hit Command F, that's fine. If I go Pro Q3, that's fine. But if I want to go down in that list, I can't. I can't. And the reason is because this is in front. If I clicked here, then I can go down and select the right one. And so this introduces a mouse click. Mouse clicks are not welcomed in this household. We're not using the mouse ever. And so what this is doing is essentially making sure that this window is focused before it's hitting Command F. and then it can go down and select the right one for you. I don't know why it's window index 2 and not window index 1, because you would think this is the main one, so it's 1. I don't know what window index number 1 is, but I found that this is number 1 in my system. So if you find that it's not doing what you want it to do, that it's not Command F typing in the plugin and able to go down, then try different numbers. Try 1, try 2, try 3. See what works for you, but I think it's going to be 2 because that's what works for me. And then the next thing that you might want to choose is, again, change the Ableton version that is right for you. If you're using Live 11 Suite, great. If not, and you have a different one, then choose the one that is relevant for you. Just know that once you upgrade, you need to upgrade it for all of your plugins. So you're going to go to each plugin and update it. You do it once every, Ableton doesn't really make a lot of changes. So like once every few years when you get 12, you know what I mean? So that's fine. And then you can kind of follow along and see it's going to hit Command F and then it's going to hit delete. Why? Because I just want to clear everything out of the search bar. It should do it automatically, but I don't want to leave anything for chance. So it's going to hit delete, and then it's going to type in the plugin name. So if we do something like FabFilter Pro Q3, this is kind of the next step that you want to do every time that you work for a new plugin that you want to add. You want to take the name that you think that you want to type in, and you want to test it. So if I search for that, I get 2 results. And this is kind of a tip. If you're using VST and not audio units, if you add VST3, which you should be using, it will only show you the VST3 version. So I find that really cool. So actually, I like having all of this in my plugin list instead of just Pro Q3, because VST3 has a lot of benefits. It's more efficient. It's probably the future because Steinberg is killing VST2 anyways. So by having VST3 at the end of your plugins, you know that you're getting the right one. And then it's basically going to pause for a second, arrow down, and then it's going to hit enter. However, the reason why I don't want you to just like, oh yeah, do this for all of the plugins and test each one before you do that is because let's say that this is actually, you know what, let's connect this to our list. So what do we need to do? We need to give it a name, and you should name each of your macros because it adds to the address where Alfred is looking for this macro. So we're going to do FabFilter Pro Q3, and then we want to go to or by script and go to Apple script. And then we're going to copy all of this. You can see how this is insert FabFilter Pro Q3. If I change it to 6 or 7, which I can't wait to see what they come up in 7, you see that it updates the name. So the name is important for Alfred to kind of call up this. So FabFilter Pro Q3, and then you're going to copy all of this, and then you're going to go to your list, and you're going to go to Pro Q. We already did this in the Cubase tutorial. This is going to be empty, or it will have some sort of line of code here or something. Just make sure you don't have anything, and you're going to paste it. And so now, if I go to Ableton and I hit Command Y and I have Pro Q3, it's going to type it for me, and it's going to put it there for me. Great. Fantastic. Let's do the second one, and I'll show you what I mean by you have to test each one just to make sure that the macro is executing the macro properly for you. So let's go to Keyboard Maestro, and then let's duplicate this. Let's do 1176. So let's do UADX, because we want the native version, 1176 Rev A. While we're here, let's just go ahead and copy this Apple script that executes this macro, go back to Alfred, put it on the Rev A one. So essentially Command Y launches our list. Our list then goes through this. If we chose 1176 Rev A, it's going to execute this Apple script, UADX 1176 Rev A. And so now it's going to execute this macro. Well, we haven't configured it properly. We need to put the plugin name. But here's the kicker. If you type in UADX 1176 Rev A, even if I add compressor, I still get Rev E. And I think because Ableton is trying to be overly complicated or like think outside the box and like, oh, you wrote Rev, maybe you want the Rev E, even though the name is exact. So in that case, just having one down arrow wouldn't cut it. We need 2, right? And so for the Rev A, we want to copy the pause and the down arrow, and then we want to paste it right after. So Command V, and then we have 2 down arrows. Let's go ahead and do 11 UADX 1176 Rev A compressor. You do want to get as close as possible. So once we type this in, down, down, and then enter. And so now if I go to 1176 Rev A, down, down, and then it loads the right plugin. And remember that I told you, if you tweak something and then you want to load up Pro Q, if we were to do Command F Pro Q, we couldn't, right? We couldn't do down. However, say we tweak some things and then, oh, you know what'll be great after this compressor? Pro Q. It does it because index, right? So this is how we bypass that. So essentially, all you have to do now is make a macro for each of your inserts. So let's say, what's our third one? It's LA2A, right? So let's see, what's the name in Ableton? So it's UADX LA2A Silver Compressor. And so we have a duplicate here. We're going to call it LA2A Silver. And then we're going to paste the name here, make sure that it's correct, and then we have the address, so all we have to do is copy and then paste it here, replace this line, and then now if you go to Ableton and we choose LA2A, pasting it, and yes, that's it. Make more items in your list, remember all the steps, go back, ask me, but basically that's it. It's been so long. I know this tutorial is so complicated because there's the Alfred aspect of it and there's like then keyboard Maestro and everything. But once you have this set up, you won't believe how fast you're going to produce. This eliminates thinking of what the plugin is and which one you're using and mouse clicks and stuff like that. And then it's a creative tool that is really, really, really awesome. And so, yeah, if you made it this far, congratulations. You are probably going to produce faster than anybody in your friends group. You're going to be in the same room with other producers and you're going to whip this out and they're going to be like, what the hell is that thing? And then you will have the biggest flex ever. Whew. We did it. We did it. Give power to the people. I'm so glad that I got through this, not because I wanted to be done with it, but because this has been such a great contributor to my workflow, and now you are able to use this as well. So I'm very, very happy. If you run into any trouble and you are stuck and things are not working, reach out in the comments, in my DM, on my Instagram, TikTok, everything, all the socials. Follow me, let me know what's up. And yeah, I hope that at least one person out of the 3 that are going to watch this whole video is actually going to use it, and for me it's worth it. Like, yeah, whatever, as many hours as I spend making this, shooting this, and then I'm going to edit this and it's going to be long. For me, one person is going to use this. I'm a happy person, and that's all I need. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you so much for being with me. Comment, like, subscribe, socials, everything. Yeah. Stay creative. Stay awesome. I'll see you in the next one.